Oh wow, I was muted. Well, hello everybody. Yeah, so I'm just looking through what's been happening today and catching up on everything. Seems like the whole situation with Venezuela is continuing to get ridiculous as I think just a couple hours ago, Trump announced that Venezuela will be turning over between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil to the United States. And it says the oil will be sold at its market price. And that money will be controlled by me as President of the United States of America to ensure it is used to benefit the people of Venezuela and the United States. This is insane. Let's bring up this screed here. Yeah, that's pretty wild. Um, I've never seen like a war where they're just like, yeah, we're gonna take your shit. Even though that's what they do anyway, but it is wild this announcement. Um, I wonder how the rest of the country is gonna take this. How the normies are gonna react because generally people seem to love war for some reason because they're crazy, and the media is really hyping it up regardless of which channel it is. You get a little bit of dissent on the Democrat side, but not really enough. They still are super careful to be like, well, he is a really bad guy, and like even if he is, it still justifies, like, you're not making a good argument when you do that. It justifies the action that's being taken place. Uh, so yeah, I'm not sure. And I started to see some polls that people were like reacting well to it now, or their opinion was improving. But I hope that that was just bullshit because generally, I mean, at least in the feeds that I have, I'm not sure how much of an echo chamber it is, but people are not having it. But I do have some people that creep up into my comments that don't know what's going on. Um, but yeah, so then there's that, and there was I think some other stuff with Venezuela as well before I get into um the Iran thing, which is kind of weird. I don't have a ton of information on the Iran thing, but I did see, yeah, we'll just get into looking around for that because we can look for more information live here. Oh yeah, that was the other thing about the Venezuela situation is that I've seen multiple reports that both Russia and China are going to be like giving the oil tankers that they send to and from Venezuela military escorts. So that can get really dangerous. This says Russia has deployed a submarine and other naval units into the North Atlantic to protect the tanker Marinera. Marinera? Okay, from possible seizure by U.S. forces, according to the Wall Street Journal. The tanker, previously known as Bella 1, they should have stuck with that name, has been followed by the U.S. Coast Guard for the past 17 days since leaving the Venezuelan coast and has now reached waters near Iceland and the United Kingdom. What? So it it was followed by the United States, and it had a Russian escort. That is insane. And maybe that's why they deployed it. It doesn't really say that, and Wall Street Journal is always paywalled, but that's kinda what it sounds like. It sounds like it was deployed for that purpose, which is kinda nuts. And I was reading a similar thing about China as well. But yeah, this Iran thing, of course, there's these massive protests going down in Iran right now, but it's hard to tell how big they actually are. It all depends on who you're talking to. Um, you know, there are there are a lot of accounts that are saying, like, the government's about to topple right now, and then there are other ones that are saying, "Oh, it's no big deal, it's just, blown out of proportion." And it usually falls down onto how they usually, feel about the regime in particular. Um, but yeah. This says that over the past several hours, dozens of U.S. Air Force refueling tankers and heavily military transport aircraft of the C-5 and C-17 types have departed from the United States from an American air base in the United Kingdom, heading towards the Middle East. According to various sources, the United States is preparing strikes against Iran, and the ongoing movement reflects the transfer of forces to that region. Like, what is going on? They have, apparently this is the footage of it. Uh, they have Venezuela they're dealing with. They have this situation now, perhaps. I mean, they have threatened. I saw this one thing saying that there's 6 to 8 different countries that he has threatened since the year has started. And it's hasn't even been 7 days yet in the year. So that's pretty insane, and th think could be anything, you know what I mean? Like, they could be like, Israel could be planning something, maybe, uh, because they're vulnerable right now with the protests. I'm somewhat skeptical, um, about the US bombing them while there is a protest going on and they might do it themselves, but you never know. Donald Trump could just be like, I want to get 'em. I want to get them. So you never know. But if it was just this, I would say like it might be bullshit. But there is also this, which was posted by an account that has like 200,000 followers, and they're saying that flight radar shows US P-8 recon plane entering Iranian airspace. So that's kind of sketch. I'm not sure what this website is they're looking at. If we could flight radar, it looks like a cell phone app. It says gone dark now. They just posted that like an hour ago, though, an hour and 20 minutes. But that's a little bit sketch. It looks like the poly market's got an 18% chance on it. I don't think the US would. I think that Israel would now, and US would support is a high probability. Um, but on that front with the poly market thing, remember where I was showing that there was all this insider trading happening where people bet that Maduro was gonna be captured or something like that, or no, there was gonna be an invasion of Venezuela, that's what it was, that's what the bet was, and they made a bunch of money, on paper, but then when it came down to it, the betting website said that, technically, that didn't meet the definition that they had originally set out for being an invasion, so those people didn't get paid out. I'm not sure if the people who paid again or who I'm not sure if they ended up losing, their money, but I know that they didn't get it paid out. I think they should have called it a wash at that point and just not, you know, not paid anybody. I don't know, though. It depends on how much of a fine print they have on that. But yeah, that let's see if there's any other updates. This is what I was searching is the Iran military plane. All these people, well, I gotta get on this uh flight website. Everybody's posting shit from the flight website. But it looks like that one from an hour ago is the most recent. Yeah. There's also stuff going on in Israel now though, um as there's things going down in Iran. So, yeah, it's I don't think having issues internally will stop them from having their external battles with each other, oddly enough, which is insane. That's how governments operate, I guess. Um, but yeah, this says at least one ultra orthodox Israeli was killed and three others wounded after a bus ran over demonstrators during a mass Haredi protest against conscripting students into the Israeli army. There was a couple posts saying that it was like a number much higher than that. So this one's probably accurate. It's probably accurate that it was one, but it is a yeah, this is the footage of it. Apparently, he's just running through a crowd, and it's ironic because there was people sharing that footage of, like, the, um, the big police vehicle running over the crowd in Venezuela as, like, "This is why we should invade," and stuff. Yeah, and, yeah, so 15,000 people apparently, which is pretty nuts. Yeah, and I think this was the list that I saw. Venezuela, Cuba, Greenland, Iran, Canada, Colombia, and Mexico in the past 85 hours of 2026. And I guess that was like a day ago, so who knows what has happened since then. Um, there's also this thing with Epstein, and later I think I'm going to get into the eugenics thing with Epstein. I have some stuff together for that, so we could look through that and also the new developments in the emails from his kind of eugenics obsession. But let's see what Thomas Massey, if I could get the video to play, it seems like it'll play. Um, see what he has to say about what's going on with the DOJ right now.
And for the fact that these Epstein files still, there are millions of more documents.
Why it's got to do me like that?
That they're still reviewing at this point. If this were a private law firm with 5% of the resources of the DOJ, this would have been done by the deadline. And they just missed another deadline, which is the report to Congress, which is supposed to list all of the politicians that are in their files. And also, they're supposed to justify all the redactions 15 days after the first 30-day window. But the biggest problem isn't that they're missing the deadlines, is what they're redacting. So they're citing the Privacy Act, and they're trying to pretend like that overrides a law that we just passed that says you can't withhold records to prevent embarrassment. They're also citing FOIA standards, which don't apply to our law when they're trying to say that they don't have to release internal decisions. But our bill specifically says release internal decisions.
So what are you going to do about it?
We're looking at that.
Yeah. Who knows what they can actually do. But it is kind of interesting that, it's pretty obvious at this point that he's covering for somebody, if not himself, because they're trying to use all these obscure laws to to redact whoever they want, whatever they want. And apparently they said, I didn't hear him say it in that interview, but apparently he did say that they're trying to cover up intelligence connections in addition to, covering for the embarrassment of powerful people. Yeah, I'm not. I'll have to look up if I can bring that flight tracker up on desktop so I can look at it on stream sometime. Yeah, that thing. I pay attention to that stuff for some reason. It is quite interesting though, especially how like mainstream that's become. But yeah, I think I could kind of start on the Epstein stuff unless anybody else has seen anything interesting that you want me to cover. Yeah, let's get into some of these articles that I came across. So Trying to find one of the good articles that doesn't have a paywall. All right, here we go. I think there should be something in here. Oh, wait. So his interests aligned with the genetic basis of human behavior, wrote science historian Naomi Oreskes in 2020 Scientific American, a eugenics influenced view that is seeing a revival today among Silicon Valley voices. Let's see. That's probably not it. Let's see. Uh, yeah, okay. New York Times. What's this byline? LA Times. For 2 decades, Jeffrey Epstein moved through the private networks that shape modern Silicon Valley. Let's see. I know that he had like some plans for a baby farm at his New Mexico ranch. That's like I'm definitely going to cover that, but I want to kind of get into the roots of his obsession with this and kind of start from the beginning a little bit. I got to silence that. Let's see. Joseph Bach, whose work on cognitive architects and machine consciousness has shaped advanced AI research and influenced figures like Elon Musk, appears in the documents engaging Epstein in sweeping discussions about race, hierarchy, genetic engineering, and the supposed utility of mass death, including under conditions of climate stress. Joseph Bach. I've never heard of this guy, but I know Nick Bostrom for sure. I think I read his book. Meanwhile, another philosopher whose ideas underpin much of modern long termism and whose work helped shape Silicon's Valley thinking on artificial intelligence, Nick Bostrom, moved through the same intellectual and institutional ecosystem. Oh, he's published arguments on eugenics too. He's published like he has like the most popular AI book out there. Pretty sure I got it on Audible or something like that. But it went into mostly like uh AI, like theoretical AI and like kind of their game theory on when an AI becomes consciousness, at which point will they take out the human race and what would push them to do so. Quite weird. But a lot of people in Silicon Valley definitely like him. His name is pretty big, but the Joshua Bach thing, I don't know him. We'll look him up in a minute. His published arguments on eugenics, selective population strategies, and existential optimism reveal a parallel strand of thinking within the milieu, financed and legitimized by many of the same networks. Both men were also financed by Epstein. That's wild that Nick Bostrom was financed by Epstein and is a crazy eugenicist. That is nuts. Taken together, the Bach correspondence and long-termist ideas. So yet long-termist is this weird kind of philosophy that a lot of these tech billionaires have, where it's kind of like this mental gymnastics for them to justify basically anything that they want to do, because the theory is that you should do if you have a lot of resources, you should use those resources so they are for the betterment of humanity in the long term, not in the short term, but in the long term, because it doesn't really matter what happens now in the grand scheme of things. What really matters is what happens, for humanity going on. That's why all these billionaires are building spaceships instead of solving poverty, because they believe in this shit. Um, that's literally the reason. Um, but taken together, the Bach correspondence and the long termist ideas circulating in this environment show that human hierarchy, population thinning, and genetic destiny were not fringe provocations, but part of the ambient intellectual air inside the circles designing the next generation of AI. So, yeah, this is definitely um like these people, like, they look at most of society as worthless, and they think that the world would probably be better off without us, is what a lot of these people believe. I wonder if it'll get into the specific quotes. If not, I'll have to find a way to search through Gmail to figure out how to uh dig up some of these conversations that he's had with these people. Let's see. Previous reporting by the Boston Globe first brought to light Bach's exchanges with Epstein by focusing narrowly on some of Bach's comments in isolation. What has been missing, and what this investigation provides for the first time, is a clear view of how those ideas move through the Epstein funded institutions, long termist organizations, and the AI networks now exerting growing influence over Silicon Valley's emerging political order. And yeah, it's kind of wild to think, like I was just saying, of what Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, they are building rocket ships. They believe in this shit. Mark Zuckerberg does. Sam Bankman-Fried definitely did, and was like really evangelical about it. But I think it's kind of interesting to think that many of these people were probably funded by Epstein. Especially, it says even that a couple of the people mentioned in here that were like very prominent in the intellectual side of AI. Wow, that's pretty nuts. One of the most revealing documents in the House Oversight Committee's Epstein archive, in an email chain from the same month that Epstein won the Republican nomination as presidential candidate in July 2016, between Jeffrey Epstein and the cognitive scientist Joshua Bach. This was 8 years after Epstein's convictions. By this point, Bach was an integral member of the EDGE Foundation, the network of Silicon Valley elites founded by John Brockman, but principally funded by Jeffrey Epstein. That's another thing. I keep on hearing about this EDGE Foundation and coming across this EDGE Foundation. I'm going to make a note. That could be like something for tomorrow, maybe. Let's see. EDGE Foundation. All right. So, around the time Bach was working across the Harvard program for evolutionary dynamics and at the MIT Media Lab. So they were both getting, oh, yeah, okay, let's see. What do you consider the most interesting recent scientific news? What makes it important? I guess this was the subject line of the email, perhaps. And I'm not sure, is this from? Okay, so this is what, no, all right, I understand now. This is his newsletter that he put in the MIT thing. Gotcha. So he says everything is computation. So this is something that he publicly put out. These days see a tremendous number of scientific news, significant scientific news. That's a weird thing to say, a number of news. And it is hard to say which one has the highest significance. Climate models indicate that we are past critical tipping points and are irrevocably headed for a new difficult age for our civilization. Mark expands on the work of Brian and Juan and demonstrates how we can abolish the idea of space-time in favor of a discrete tensor technology. Oh, tensor network. Yeah, okay. thus opening the way for a unified theory of physics. Blah, blah, blah. Let's see. That's not that important. CRISPR, technology that holds promise for simple and ubiquitous gene editing. Deep learning starts to tell us how hierarchies of interconnected feature detectors can autonomously form a model of the world. All right, this is some word salad. It's not just me, right? Learn to solve problems and recognize speech, image, and video. Okay. It is perhaps equally important to notice where we lack progress. Sociology fails to teach us how societies work. Philosophy seems to have become barren and infertile. The economic sciences seem ill equipped to inform our economic and fiscal policies. Psychology does not comprehend the logic of our psyche, and neuroscience tells us the things that happen in our brain, but largely not what they are. Okay. This is what's in my view, the 20th century's most important addition to understanding the world is not positive science, computer technology, space flight, or the foundational theories of physics. It is the notion of computation. Okay, so that was his contribution to the Edge Foundation website. Why is this significant? I mean, the whole hierarchies thing, like, okay, of interconnected defectors. I'm not even really sure what he was talking about there, unless it's like an AI term that I'm unfamiliar with. Bach has gone on to become a heavyweight in the AI industry. Liquid neural systems that influence how the top tech Elons think about the next frontier of machine intelligence. All right. Elon retweeting him. He's like, you know, weirdo posting with Elon. Let's see. We began in the 2016 email chain between Epstein and Bach. All right, here's going to be the interesting part. Was the discussion about human learning quickly mutated into one of the most explicit articulations of race hierarchy, gender essentialism, and authoritarian governance found anywhere in the released files. Bach's email begins with a pseudo neuroscientific discussion of layers of cognition, a developmental metaphor he and Epstein share. Bach tells Epstein he has looked up the statistics and asserts that black kids in the US have slower cognitive development and never catch up, while while outperforming white children in early motor skills. He insists that researchers' attempts to attribute this to environmental factors are misleading, and he probably gives no evidence for that assertion. He then advances an evolutionary explanation that places African Americans and Europeans on different biological tracks. In his words, black children's fastest motor. I'm just making sure that he doesn't like say anything completely horrific. Like I don't, means they're. So he's basically throwing out the crazy, the classic racist bullshit tropes. Let's see. And this is his exact words here, talking about motor development. I suspect this means the brains are slower, but they will keep up the lead in motor development because it is easier to learn. What kind of shit is this? We definitely gotta look up who this guy is. It could be that they have an additional set of learning directives. It's like this is uh like 1800s pseudoscience. Epstein accepts and extends Bach's argument into culture writing. Music reflects the structure of African cognitive layers, while Western music is rigid and Chinese music is nature based, each supposedly mirroring the underlying brain architecture of its people. It's very, very bizarre. Um, that's such a bizarre thing for these people to be having a conversation about. And I don't. I mean, yeah, like there are different styles of music in different places, but like I definitely notice more similarity when I've been in places around the world, especially with how big electronic music is and stuff now. You know, let's see. The email moves seamlessly from race to gender. Bach argues that women find abstract systems, conflicts, and mechanisms intrinsically boring, while men find elaborate social relations boring. He writes that most men in computer science do not write programs because they enjoy solving puzzles. I hate these kind of arguments like men be like this, woman be like this, black person be like this, white person be like this. It's like such a essentialist nonsense. Um, like, and he continues. Bach characterizes Chinese people as playing an inordinate amount of attention to authority because historically the authorities tended to kill a lot if they did not. While Jews tend to be intellectually independent and anti-authoritarian, which he suggests explains their creativity. What? IQ is the only meaningful difference. IQ has been proven to be bullshit for a long time and a very narrow um, measure of intelligence. And from what I understand, I think that it was initially developed for the purposes of exclusion. Like, uh, let me see. Like it was specifically like targeted to just um to be much easier for people that have had a certain upbringing and things like that. So yeah, yeah, definitely. Hold on. Every one of these websites is like accept my cookies. Eat my cookies now. See, look at this. From grade school to college, students of color have suffered from the effects of bias testing. So it's like the tests are made. Um, yeah, they're made so people with a certain type of upbringing that have have an easier time going through. Let's see what we have here. We still think there's something wrong with the kids rather than recognizing there's something wrong with the test. And this is just like standardized testing. Let's see. A century-old test to identify children struggling in school evolved into assessments to determine intelligence, but should it have? Ah. So it was used for children. But not only was this interpretation a far cry from the more nuanced scientific understanding of human intelligence, but it enables fields well outside of education to apply high IQ scores in inappropriate and often discriminatory ways. Yeah, it's like a very, it doesn't, it's a very narrow reading of anything, and it doesn't really tell you much. Let's see. So what is the, yeah. I just kinda wanted to bring that up and make sure that I wasn't bullshitting about, it, uh so it became yeah. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't bullshitting about the origins of that, and I was. Let's see. Uh, we gotta return to the Epstein. Here we go. Nope, wrong one. Nah, this one. Alright, cool. IQ is not the only. So yeah, this was their quote there. Explore whether cognitive differences should be altered genetically. That is weird. Bach writes that changing the time correlations by genetic switch or other methods might Make blacks smarter by adjusting the developmental timing of specific neural layers. These people are insane. This is an unabashed proposal for genetic and social engineering on explicitly racial terms. This this is crazy than I expected. You know, I expected him to talk about his baby farms and stuff like that. That's the part of it I heard. I have not heard all this, although I definitely knew that Epstein was racist um, from his requests of the kind of girls that he wanted, essentially. Um, from this point onward, Bach speculates openly about mass death. Maybe climate change is a good way of dealing with overpopulation. The Earth's forest fire, potentially a good thing for the species, he writes. Wow. The Earth's forest fire may be good for the species. And it says the subject line is re-taboo. That's their. He goes on further still. Too many people, so many mass executions of the elderly and infirm make sense. The elderly and wow. If the brain discards if the brain discards unused neurons, why should society keep their so-called keep their equivalent? Wow. The radical idea of treating individuals in a society as cells and the society itself as a well organized organism is fascism, of course, probably because the most efficient and rationally stringent way of governance. If someone could pull it off in a sustainable way, I rather like the treatment fascism gets in the Amazon series, The Man in the High Castle, which explores what would have happened if the Germans and Japanese had won the war. A society that tries to function as a brutal and ruthlessly efficient machine, eliminating all social and evolutionary slack. It is very dark, but not a flat caricature of a pointless evil for its own sake. Wow. What, like, these people are insane. Hey, what's up? Good to see you. Sorry I wasn't watching the chat. I was looking through this insanity of these people emailing back and forth about their plots for humanity, which is nuts. Yeah, I mean, they definitely are twisted people. Uh See, and there's more to this though. Talks about there's more in this email that isn't covered where he talks about Starship Troopers. Heinlein's late book Starship Troopers explores fascism too, but unlike Philip K. Dick, he does not see it as a form of insanity, but as the most desirable order. Starship Troopers was like a parody of fascism. Doesn't he understand this? Like he's Mr. Scientist guy. Shouldn't he understand what satire is? I don't think he gets it. He does not see it as a form of insanity, but as its most desirable order. I don't think that is what Starship Troopers is trying to say, unless it's a different Starship Troopers. Epstein does not push back. Maybe that's why they didn't include that last line of the email in this quote, because it's nonsensical, but it should have been included. Epstein does not push back and in turn receives praise from Bach for his unfiltered worldview. I find your political incorrectness very fascinating. I think you are simply entirely unconstrained in your thoughts. These people, man. Their exchange continues with discussions of where different races and genders sit on the bell curve. Yeah, that's that conversation again. This is the name of the 1994 book by Charles Murray. Let's see. Average humans are probably not fully able to learn how to program. Fraction of the people that reshape the world are at the right end of the bell curves. So, difference and variation means fewer women. We tend what? Okay, what? That's bizarre. I don't understand. I don't. That seems like a total non sequitur. We tend to be more interested in the outliers. Have people explicitly evolved to not be too smart on average, or is general intelligence so hard to get from human brains? This is coming from a dude that didn't know that Starship Troopers was a parody, like, of fascism. Bach has since partly distanced himself from these views. In response to a Boston Globe piece describing some of his comments to Epstein on race and gender, he wrote, "Race is itself not casual in cognitive differences, of course, and later research brought me to my current view that race is not casual for differences in development, and race is not a detriment of IQ in children and adults." Oh, so he was forced to come out and apologize for that, but, like, I'm not buying that apology. I'm sorry, bro. Like, you were quite enthusiastic. Yet taken together, Bach's communications with Epstein reveal an entire architecture of thought. That's what I'm saying. Like, it was a very, very intense, intricate fantasy that he had created. Um, Increasingly common among EDGE participants: biological hierarchy, racial destiny, gender determinism, genetic optimization, population culling, fascism, and efficiency. Yeah, that sounds like these people for sure. And it was articulated by top AI theorists whose work circulated through the same networks that Epstein was funding and infiltrating. And next, this gets into long termism, which I kind of explained, but let's see what definition they give for it. Uh, yeah. A moral view that priorities ensuring humanity's existence into the far future, if necessary, through sacrifices in the present. This means I don't have to feed the poor. I will buy rocket ship to Mars. Let's see what else we got. Of course he did. He has done racist stuff in the past, although he apologized in that one when the exchange came to light as well. This is batshit. That these are this guy is the guy that, like, is the AI thought leader. That's not instilling optimism. Bostrom would go on to openly advocate in utero selective breeding to enhance population IQ, total global surveillance by artificial intelligence to prevent human extinction, and the idea that sacrificing a billion lives today might be worth it to improve the chances of 10 uh, that to improve the chances that 10 to 54th power people exist in the future. They're really tripping me up with some of this shit. Chances that 10 to the 54th power people exist in the future. I don't even know what to do with that. In 2009, the same year he joined Edged and became a regular contributor to the network. I said Edged. Bostrom co-founded the World Transhumanist Organization, now known as Humanity Plus. The transhumanists are creepy as hell too. I mean, I'm all about using technology to help people with like illnesses and disabilities that couldn't be helped otherwise. But I a lot of these people want to really go beyond that. Epstein donated over 100 grand to Bostrom's organization. This is a good this is a very well researched article. AGI and the Singularity. I think this is all bullshit personally. AGI and the Singularity. Like, I do think that there will be technological advances from AI, possibly even that radically change the economy and the workforce. But the fact that it's going to be like human, and also the the singularity is when you can't tell the difference between a human and an AI, right? I just want to make sure I'm point of when, yeah, it's yeah, it's basically there isn't a clear definition of it. I'm pretty sure it's when AI gets to the point where you can't tell the difference between a human and an AI. See, how in the world do I get through life where I'm an elf? Yeah, I know it is crazy to think like with all this crazy stuff going in the world, like we're lucky to have not encountered many of these people. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's when the AI reaches intelligence and stuff like that. I just I don't think that's coming in our lifetime. I think that that is definitely something that they are saying to get VCs to invest in their startups and stuff. Um, I'm not saying it's impossible. I just don't think that LLMs are useful, but they're not gonna jump to that because there's a limit of what you can do with you know word prediction essentially. Um, Ray Kurzweil, I've heard of him. He was a longtime member of the Edge Foundation too, and he was nuts. He was always trying to get people on the fact that we're going to merge with machines and become invincible. I remember I had some guy like telling me that at some club one night, and he wouldn't shut up about Ray Kurzweil's book and how we're going to live forever because of the nanobots and all this shit. The nanobots are going to heal all of our wounds. Let's see who else was in the Edge. Let's see. There were dinners for the Edge Foundation people. And see, look, Jeff Bezos, he's buying the rocket ship to the moon too. Sergey Brin, Larry Page of Google. Like, this is a cult. This is a death cult of people who are more powerful, like who are as powerful as the government, essentially, who are a part of the government. And yeah, insane. Segway Dean Kamen. This is the guy who's in the pictures. Former Walt Disney Imagineering executive Daniel Hillis, not familiar with them. Kurzweil would go on to director of engineering at Google. Joshua Bach, the Edge member with whom Epstein corresponded about the evolutionary utility of fascism. They were straight up fascists. Like, it's not hard to see either. I mean, if you hang out with politicians and royalty and stuff, you kind of got to be a fascist, I think. He was a research fellow under Nick Bostrom and Humanity Plus. So this Joshua Bach guy, who is a complete psycho, is like Nick Bostrom's protege. That's probably why his name isn't as big. Bostrom would be photographed at that year's Edge Foundation Billionaires Dinner. He was still doing this in 2015 after he was busted. Confidential this they have an email list of this thing. All right, hold on. I'm going to go back. I'm going to save that list thing for tomorrow. Let's see. Whoop. There it is. Yeah, I'm going to save that for tomorrow. Alongside the founders of Amazon, Google, SpaceX. See, I didn't know that that Jeffrey Bezos was down with all them. I assumed, but he does a good job at keeping a low profile away from away from them. I think because he doesn't post, he doesn't, and like there's even though he's a pretty evil dude, there is not a lot of there is not as much public hate against him because he just shuts the hell up. All these other dudes on Twitter, like, all day, uh, they're, like, way more hated because they share their opinions with people. Let's see what else is here. This part's the last part, it looks like. Bach now heads up the California Institute for the Machine Consciousness, whose advisors include Carl Friston, widely recognized as the #1 most influential neuroscientist in the world, and Stephen Wolfram, whose technology is used in Apple's Siri. The group's funders remain undisclosed. I would be willing to bet Epstein probably, well, except exactly. Wolfram was also a member of the Edge Foundation since around 2016 and delivered 2 webinars for the network on AI and the computational universe. House oversight files show that Epstein received an advanced draft of an Edge Foundation anthology on AI published by Penguin and edited by its CEO, John Brockman, called Deep Thinking: 25 Ways of Looking at AI. The book, released with the title Possible Minds, included contributions from several Edge members. At least one contributor, AI pioneer Danny Hillis, had been long personally acquainted with Epstein, dining with him at an Edge dinner in 1999. So that thing has been going on for 20 years or something like that, it looks like. Because I'm sure it was going on when he got busted, and that's when it ended in 2019. So it was going on for at least 20 years that they had these scientists and intellectuals in this Edge Foundation. This is definitely like one of the next things that we'll get into. And we'll probably combine the Edge stuff with the other tools that we figured out, like, like put the people's names through those search tools and stuff. The chairman is Jim Rutt, who is chairman of the Santa Fe Institute. Santa Fe, New Mexico. Yeah, that's interesting. That's one of his spots. Widely recognized as the world's leading research center for complex systems science, accepting a donation from Epstein in 2010. Epstein's exchanges with thinkers like Bach, in other words, were hardly aberrations. They flowed out of a shared environment in which extreme ideas about hierarchy, optimization, and human worth were debated casually among individuals building the core infrastructure of the digital age. Neither Joshua Bach nor the California Institute for Machine Consciousness responded to requests for comment. So, wow. I didn't even, I feel like I saw it in passing a couple times, the Edge Foundation, but I hadn't dug into it. That's definitely something significant. I'm surprised that that isn't a big part of the narrative that you know, let's see. A small but influential subset went on to maintain contact directly or indirectly after 2008. Seems like a lot of them did. Yeah. Bezos, Prin, Page, Musk, Bill Gates, Seth Lloyd. I think it's becoming clearer that Jeffrey Epstein's relationship with Bill Gates is what caused his divorce. Michael Wolff. What? Michael Wolff is an Edge. Wow. Michael Wolff is in the Edge. Wow. There we go. We knew it. December 2011 confidential email chain unearthed is part 1 in a series that underscores how Silicon Valley's most iconic players were aware of Epstein's presence among them. There was a really good There was a really good video that I saw. I wonder if I can get my, internet to cooperate, but it was this guy really broke down how Epstein showed or how those hacked emails and the way that they spoke to each other showed that they were in a different they were very much in a different class and realized it. And even if they disagreed, this is the thing that I was kind of trying to articulate in previous days about Steve Bannon and um, Chomsky being together and just the significance of that on a kind of cultural and ideological level. Like it was something that I couldn't articulate very well that this guy did. So I'll let it load while I'm going through the rest of this. Let's see. The contours of contact varied from international JP Morgan's documents describing Brin and Page taking Epstein's financial advice to Ghislaine Maxwell's appearance at one of Bezos' 2018 campfire retreats. That was very recently. To Michael Wolff relying on Epstein as a key source for his Trump biography. That is one funny thing about that situation is that he wrote like 4 books on Trump and that Epstein was one of his main sources. But the common origin point remained the same. The Edge Foundation was the conduit through which Epstein entered these circles, a fact unacknowledged by its alumni. That's wild. Epstein's underwriting of Edge gave him extraordinary access and trust with men who were already building the systems. This was one of the ways that he got in with all these scientists was through this foundation thing. Threaded through the infrastructure was a worldview that Epstein helped architect the elevation of a self defined cognitive aristocracy, rising skepticism towards democratic accountability, yeah, and obsession with racial and gender hierarchy and genetic optimization. Yeah, this is where they want to like, yeah, mess with people with CRISPR. Machine intelligence as the inevitable future of humanity. If it survives extinction, the legitimacy of population culling to root out inferior groups, all rooted in a hyper reductionist, technocratic, and arguably unscientific view of existence as a computer simulation in an amoral universe, amoral multiverse of simulations. Technocratic, that's technocracy. That's a big part of the philosophy that they have too. That's something I have a note to cover soon. I know somebody that did a pretty good documentary on it. I'm gonna see if I can play some of it. I'm gonna ask them sometime soon. Let's see. See if there's anything else in here. That's pretty wild. That is a pretty wild thing. But let's look up more on this guy first, this Bach guy, because he seems crazy. Let's see. Joshua, right? Yeah, I know it was spelled different than I expected, so I had to find it. This is the guy. This is the master race guy. He thinks he's the peak human. And he's German too. This is AI researcher and philosopher known for his work on cognitive architectures, artificial intelligence, born in Weimar, East Germany, interest in philosophy, artificial intelligence, cognitive cyber animism. He has pioneered this concept, it seems. Joshua Bach's concept of cyber animism proposes that consciousness may be a form of self-organizing software that exists not only in human brains, but potentially in artificial systems and throughout nature. This is why I was having trouble reading this dude's word salad earlier. The idea revives ancient animist notions about spirits and nature, but reinterprets them through a modern computational lens. Bach suggests that consciousness could be a kind of software running in the brain and wonders if similar programs might exist in plants and even entire ecosystems. Why do I feel like so many of the philosophies that they have are just like post ex facto justifications for the way that like they want to behave in the world? In his book, Principles of Synthetic Intelligence, Bach outlines the foundational principles of synthetic cognition. Didn't you just talk about his theories on consciousness? Consciousness and free will. Oh, let's see his. He often debates whether free will truly exist or is merely a byproduct of predictive models constructed by our brains. Oh, there's no free will. It's just byproduct of predictive models constructed by our brains. Oh, thank you, thank you. Yeah, yeah. It took me a minute to catch up. Um, but yeah, advanced AIs may no longer have a good use for consciousness awareness anymore. Let's see. Philosophical views. Watch this be like 5 pages long, or his association with Jeffrey Epstein's as long as the rest of his bio. Bach's interest extended beyond AI. His work heavily influenced. Let's see. This is probably going to be most of the stuff that we just read, so I'll just kind of skim through it and see if there's anything interesting. It looks like it has the numbers here, though. Claiming that donations made in wait, let me start at the beginning of the sentence. The report indicated that Bach was hired in the media lab partly due to Epstein's donations to support Bach, claiming that donations made in November 2013 and in July totaled to $300,000, or roughly 40% of Epstein's post-convictions donations to MIT. Okay. So it says that Harvard never paid or received funds to support Bach's research, but it's like it was obviously a quid pro quo kind of situation. It was made public, revealing race realist and sexist remarks. What the hell is that term? Race scientist? Too many people, so many mass executions of the elderly and infirm. Yeah, that was a wild quote. In another message to Epstein, Bach expressed sympathy for fascism. Yeah, that was the High Castle quote. He is still an active participant. Like, why is this dude? I don't know. Like it is like completely normal for all these guys to be fascist and not just to be cool with everybody. But it is not an unusual thing. Like there is a long line of so-called intellectuals that are into this really extreme fascist, like only the rich people, and only the rich white people of a certain type of white as well, are acceptable. And you also need to prove yourself in the Thunderdome of capitalism as well. Um, so a lot of even though this way of thinking has been around for an unfortunately long amount of time, there was a person who intellectualized it named Francis Galton, right? Yeah. And this guy was Charles Darwin's cousin, I believe, right? Yeah, yeah, he's Darwin's cousin right here. And I'm pretty sure that this is the guy who put all this stuff into books for the first time. Yeah. This was the originator of the eugenics movement. So, you know, in our time, we know that this is, at least most of us know that this is terrible shit. It's unfortunately making a comeback. But in this time, it was not only mainstream, but it was like high society beliefs. And, some of this stuff definitely creeped its way into Darwin's work. Um, you know, the the way that the whole survival of the fittest thing is described. Even though there is truth about adaptation in nature, there are a lot of kind of assumptions that are later on made in that work from those things. Um, so yeah, it was him, and then the other guy who popularized it in the US was named Madison Grant, right? I'm pretty sure it was Madison Grant. Let's see. What is this? All right. I was getting a pop-up asking me about my ads. Like, what ads do you want? Let's see. So yeah, this guy was a eugenicist and advocate of scientific racism who really popularized this stuff in the United States. But he was also the he Hitler kind of referenced him as an inspiration, and he called this book that this guy wrote "The Passing of the Great Race." He there it says here, one of the most famous racist texts, a book Adolf Hitler referred to as his personal Bible. So that's one of the things is like, a lot of that stuff that really what happened in Germany during World War II was in many ways based on things that were already happening here, whether it was Jim Crow or whether it was uh, the extermination and genocide of the natives. Um, a lot of those things and the justifications for them were taken from Americans. See what else is but I just figured that was important historical context, because unfortunately that stuff is definitely making a comeback. Let's see what else we have here. Oh yeah, I wanted to show that video. Let's see if I can get this. This is this guest who was on the Chris Hedges show, and the way that he described this Epstein situation was wild. Hopefully I can get this to play.
I want to close by asking you about the Epstein. I mean, like you, I was fascinated with the emails, and I thought your column, which I quoted from in the New York Times, was really smart because it did just rip back the veil on these people like Lawrence Summers and others, and just showed how shabby their both, not just their moral life, but even their intellectual life was. And so, that it was a kind of one of those moments where we had a window into the inner workings of the elite that you write about.
It was, and there's this old line, from Maya Angelou: when people show you who they are, believe them. Yeah. When people who normally have private servers protecting their emails, when you get a glimpse of those emails, believe them, because you're not going to get those kind of glimpses very often. It's worth understanding that this is a group of people. We live in an age of oversharing, but this is a group of people who undershare, right? This is a group of people who are very private. You don't normally know how they operate. And what we most don't know, what we have least access to in a way, is their mentalities, right? How they really think, how they think about us. These are the things that are not filed in IRS forms, that are not filed in lobbying disclosures. And what when the Epstein emails came out, released by the House Oversight Committee, I started just reading out of curiosity. And then with the kind of winner-take-all lens and for all the reasons that we've talked about today, I started thinking, gosh, I think I see this in a way that's a little bit different, because I guess I was frustrated that week that they came out. Everybody seemed to be, all the journalists seemed to be looking for the same story, which is like, did Donald Trump rape children and was it caught on video? Right? Now, I think that's as important a possibility to uncover as anybody else, right? And if that's the case, you know, there could be no more important story, arguably. That said, there were thousands and thousands of emails providing this glimpse into a giant group of elites. And everybody was like, is Trump a child rapist? Is like name searching Trump. And as I was reading them, I was like, I think this other story is really important. By the way, the other story, the story about wealth and power and how they operate, so many of the survivors who have spoken out have said, don't let this just be a story of a small number of people trafficking. Make sure you realize this is a story about wealth and power, right? So like the women at the heart of this have understood what they lived through to be a story about wealth and power that took on the flavor of these cruelties, these specific cruelties, but they understood it to operate in a context that made it possible. So I was reading the emails and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna read all these emails because I think there's something here. So I spent 5 or 6 days reading all of the emails. I don't recommend it. And I started making notes, in many ways informed by my work in Winners Take All, about like, what am I seeing here about the way these people are interacting, about the way they're operating, about, you know, I often think about it as kind of like dance moves. What are the dance moves that we're seeing in this cohort of people? And the more time I spent with it, it seemed to me that we were seeing a portrait of how a power elite operates, how it thinks of us, how it defends its power. And three things I would say stood out. Number one, this is a group of people. Almost every email, and so many of the emails start with, where are you? I'm in Tokyo. Where are you? Where are you? When are you going to be in New York? I'm passing through. This kind of what I call the whereabouts inquiry, this kind of echolocation, human echolocation. And what I think that's about is this is a group of people who are actually in the air and not tethered to place. And most of us are tethered to place. Most of us live in a certain community where we have quite a bit of a stake in how that community is. But this group of people is not like us in that way. This power elite is fundamentally global and fundamentally loyal to itself. Second, this is a power elite that kind of the grease in the wheels of its connection was information barter and inside information, intel, edge, as it's called in finance. But these people are constantly trying to give each other and take from each other proprietary knowledge about, you know, who's the new FBI director going to be, or what's that company going to do, or, you know, what are you hearing about the Saudi sovereign wealth fund? That kind of information barter. And third, this is a group of people, and this goes to the heart of so much of your work over the years. This is a group of people who are on the same team, whether Republican or Democrat, this, that, who out there are certainly on opposite sides of important policy questions. I'm not saying that they're all on the same team. They've been on different sides of profound questions. When I say they're on the same team, what I mean is they are.
This is the part that I found really interesting. I could have bumped it up to here, but I couldn't remember like what it was specifically that he said in here. The like the nomadical thing was interesting for sure. But the way that they are a part of in a minute, he's going to talk about how they're a part of the same cast. And even though, you know, they may not like each other, they definitely want to make sure that they're a part of the cast and that you're a part of the audience.
They're like the cast of the play, right? And in the play, you watch the play and the people are yelling at each other in the play, and there's certainly like characters that are in conflict in the play. But what's important for this group of people is that they be the cast and that other people not be the cast. And when this group of people fails us, When a Larry Summers fails us in pushing for the financial deregulation under Bill Clinton, that then came to fruition in the financial crisis under George W. Bush and then Barack Obama, a Larry Summers is not punished. Well, he is punished for that by getting a better job and by becoming a chief advisor in the Obama era who will now help to oversee how a crisis he helped foment will be addressed. When, as you know so well, the people who have sold fraudulent wars like the war in Iraq, when they do that and then later their fraud becomes kind of well known and the consensus becomes, even Donald Trump is being like that we shouldn't have done that. They are punished for it by getting better professorships, better roles on television. When people fail to protect us from technology, when they fail to protect us from environmental ruin, when they fail, this cast of characters, the group of people, this power elite around Epstein, this Epstein class, I think you could say, they survive no matter what happens to the country. They get promoted no matter how badly they fail us. And so where it fundamentally landed me at the end of all that reading was I started, I think, in the same place as a lot of people, which was, how could these eminent people, these bold-faced names, these people from these prestigious institutions, how could they consort with someone like him, right? There was an inherent hierarchy in the kind of questioning a lot of us were doing. How could a Gates Foundation person or how could a Harvard person consort with him? And the more you read the emails, the more it seemed to me, of course they could. When he needed new friends after his plea deal and conviction, when he needed new friends to rehabilitate him in society, make his name, scrub his name, he picked a power elite whose superpower was looking away. He, Jeffrey Epstein, and his sex crimes were not the first thing these people had ever looked away from. This was not their first rodeo.
Yeah, that was another one that hit hard in that I was like, damn, that is right. Because all these people are like, how could all these people prestigiously, eh, the celebrities and the intellectuals and the politicians that people have looked up to, how could they hang out with this dude who has done like the worst of the worst things, yet at the same time they're co-signing genocide or widespread police brutality and incarceration on a regular basis, and things like that. So and I guess your average citizen does, but they do it on a like decision level. You know what I mean? So that's not to compare the average person who might vote for a war or something like that on the same level of like one of Epstein's clients or something. But the people who are pushing the button definitely are. And these people are among the people who are pushing the buttons. So they are all in the murder, death, and pain game. And of course that's something I've definitely recognized, but articulating that in this way I thought was definitely very interesting. And yeah, I think that probably wraps me up for tonight. But we definitely have a good rabbit hole to go down for the rest of the week with the Edge Foundation. I know, who knows what's going to pop up in the news tomorrow, but if there isn't a ton to cover, then we can start figuring out the Edge Foundation and what's up with that, because I never even really came across that. Um, so that's definitely helpful. And yeah, and I'm getting closer to having that video done. And I have an idea, a really good idea for the next one I want to do. So I'm kind of like definitely rushing through it because the next one I think is going to be a lot better. I'm definitely going to focus on more of that long form content. Like you've noticed, a lot of the stuff that I have is clips from the stream in the videos. And that's, good for content on here, especially if people can't make the live streams. Um, and I think in the future I might end up doing the like unlisting the streams after they're done and then just doing the clips. But I'm hoping to have like a long form kind of video essay once a month or something like that. We'll see if I can manage, but I have a pretty good workflow, and I have a ton of ideas for things that would make good videos. So I already showed a little bit of the first one. I left the streams up for the past 2 nights where I showed a little bit at the end. I worked on a little bit more of it, but I don't have it on this computer. But yeah, that brings me to the end there. If you want to check out my book, Paper Squares and Purple Stars, you can get it on Amazon, but there's also you can read it for free on hive.blog/John Vibes, and the individual chapters are in different blogs, but it starts at the top at the last chapter, so you have to scroll down the bottom and find it. But yeah, I have pictures from the events and stuff on there too. I have a few other books that you can find as well. But yeah, I guess that's it for today. Thank you for everybody who is coming in. You could check out the replay, and I will catch you tomorrow. Peace.